I'm going to be talking specifically about targeting outcomes versus activity, which we say a lot in our industry. And I will tell you right now, this is usually like a multi-day thing. And actually, I've actually built this into a whole boot camp. So you're getting the Reader's Digest version. I'm just telling you that right now. But for those of you who are new, just so you know, if you don't know who I am, I'm Christopher Lind. I've been hosting these things since they started. I like to say I bridge business, tech, and human experience. So I'm more of a transformation person than a learning person, but learning is such a critical side effect of what I do. But really, a lot of people also know I'm a husband and dad to 8. So that's as important to me as anything I do professionally, and all this stuff. So you can go, I finally have a website because people are like, where do I find stuff about you? I'm like, well, good grief. I'm on Substack and YouTube, and use that QR code. You'll find all the stuff I do, and you can connect with me later if you want. But this topic to me is like super important because it gets missed a lot. And for all the noise we make about how important it is to focus on outcomes, we so often forget that sometimes the outcomes we're focusing on are actually activity, and we don't see it. And the problem with that is it has major consequences for it. I mean, this is causing disengagement with employees. People are spending time on just absolute useless stuff. People are not engaged at work. The fact that like 7 out of 10 people just show up and make it to the end of the day honestly breaks my heart, because I've led teams for so long that it doesn't have to be that way. And that's not just a learning thing, that's just a work thing. But learning has the ability to influence this and shape it in a much more positive way than we often see it. And so this isn't a learning problem, it's a business problem. And so when I do the work I do at trying to help people focus on outcomes, it's not about pushing a learning agenda. It's not about making people happy or feel good about their jobs. It's about the fact that happy people focused on outcomes drive higher performance. Like, it's a win-win. When the tide goes up, everybody wins. And so I struggle sometimes going like, I don't know why we don't just get laser focused on this, but I understand we get distracted. And so with this, I want to be really clear when I define the difference between these two, because like I said, it's easy to think you're focusing on outcomes when you're really focused on activity. And a big part of that is the activity is the what. It's when we're tracking what people are doing. And I see this a lot in leadership where leaders go, well, we're going to finish this project. And I'm like, that's not an outcome. That's an activity. Finishing that project is an activity. You're doing the project. You didn't answer the question. Why? What is it going to do for you? What are you hoping to accomplish on the other side of that? What is going to be different tomorrow when we get there than what you're doing today? And when you can actually help align people around this, that's what the outcome is. You go, we want to do this project. So we get to this point, we get to see this thing, we get to see this change, we get to pull this off. And that's often missed in leadership. And it's missed in learning a lot of times. We say, hey, we want you to take this course. We want you to go through this. We even might get the behavioral objectives. We want you to be better at doing this and better at doing this and better at doing that. That's still activity. Why? Why should they care? Why do you want them to be better at the different things that you're pushing them to do? And getting to that is super critical. So I have 4 shifts. Now, like I said, this is very much the high level, and I'm going to talk about how microlearning can play into this. And it actually ties nice off of what Emily had said, because if you look at the first one on this, a lot of times we've defined what we think matters, and that's how you end up in the Franken world of like everything is. We never go, how about we just take a focus on like what doesn't matter? And I think about learning, a lot of times we're like, well, we should do this and we should do this and we should do this and we should do this, instead of going, what actually are we doing that they don't need to be doing? And the number of times I've worked on big projects where part of my fight with executive leaders has been, yeah, but what are they doing today? And the same holds true with learning. We might be like, well, we have this leadership class. Okay, but does that class matter? Or going back to like Emily's example, do they just need to know how to do this thing? Because if they just need to know how to do this thing, then very quickly we realize none of this stuff other matters. But when we put an intentional focus on, okay, let's talk about what doesn't matter. What do we not care about? Or what isn't quite as important? Going back to the measuring less and accomplishing more, I can't count how many times I've been in analytics meetings or working with people around data and analytics, and it's easy as learning professionals. I know we get this way. We're like, oh, we should track this and we should track this and we should track this. And we don't realize we're creating a monster for ourselves and we don't even see it. And we build analytics teams to manage and monitor all the analytics that we've decided we're going to create. And we never ask the question, like, why does this matter? And both the questions I heard from both of our previous speakers of, we're asking this question because it tells us this. And that's what I want to know. So to Emily's point of, we're asking leaders after they go through this e-learning, this micro-learning, do you feel more confident? Well, why does that matter? Well, because we know if you're not confident in your decision, somebody's fallen into a fire or somebody's getting sucked into the river. And so if you're not confident and know when to rip people by the back of the hair and when to go, hey, like, let's talk about this and let's debrief this kind of stuff. If you don't have confidence in that, that matters. And I think oftentimes there's a lot of metrics we capture going, well, obviously the more data we have, the better. And that's not always true. And it actually takes our eyes off the outcome. The other one is, and I really think about both of our previous speakers, and I just think of the world we're in with AI and the pressure to do more and do it faster and do it, put more out there. And a lot of times we miss the fact that there is tremendous power in just pausing and actually just saying, rather than running faster, creating more, doing more of these things. And I think microlearning, we can run that risk because we can go, well, it's short, it's fast, we can create it more, we can torpedo and carpet bomb the organization with this stuff and it'll be better. And that's not actually true. You actually can make the situation far worse. And if we slow down and actually take a shift and go, let's think about what we're actually trying to do here. And what do we need to accomplish that? Maybe all people need to pull this off is a brief microlearning course because we know they're hitting this 5-day window where they are just shot and they need this adrenaline rush of inspiration and a reminder, hey, check on your people because they're probably tired and they might not have eaten. And so you probably need to tell them, go get an energy bar. You haven't eaten in a bit. And when you see people kind of wobbling on their feet, do this. And you might miss that when you're just so busy going, that you don't actually slow down and say, what really matters? And I think we need more of this, especially in an age where we are just pouring kerosene. We're pouring fuel on this need to go at a pace that is unsustainable for anything. The last one is shifting this idea from control to clarity. And I think this is the biggest one, going back to when you really know what the outcome is, when you really know what you're driving to, as leaders, it frees you up to not get hung up and angry and pissed off and irritated that it's not quite going the way that you'd like. Or I even think about our previous speakers talking about like when they came to the table and said, hey, we want to do this a different way. We want to approach this with microlearning. That doesn't work when you're obsessed on the activity because you look at it and you go, well, that's not what we're doing. So if that's not what we're doing, then you're either asking me to add more or you're competing with what we're already doing. Versus if you can align on, well, where are we trying to get? You now can start to say, when you have people from your team coming in and going, I understand we're trying to get here. I know we're doing this now, but what if we thought completely differently about this? And I know over the years, as I've had team members come to me, I hope I represent this well. They've come to me sometimes with things where I go, that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand where you're going with this. But then then we remind ourselves of what is the outcome. And there's a lot of times I've gone, you know what? I think that drives a better outcome. So rather than me getting in the weeds on why I don't think it'll work because it doesn't look quite like I think it does or should, let's trust it. Let's try it. And let's see if it actually achieves a better outcome. And if it doesn't, we'll adapt. And I found that these 4 are at the core of actually making this shift. Now, I know I said a lot in 12, 13 minutes. And I know sometimes I can speak in a way that makes it sound like, yeah, Christopher, that sounds great. That's wonderful. Easy for you to say. But I won't even pretend for a second that I haven't gotten the tar beaten out of me trying to do this, or that I haven't failed miserably at it countless times over the years, or I myself don't get sucked up in activity at times where I'm like, wait a minute, why am I even doing this anymore? And I have routine practices built into my schedule to force me to actually reflect on this. And letting go is really hard. I think about leadership, and one of the hardest parts of leadership is you got to stop caring about the activity that you used to care about. And that's hard because it often becomes part of our identity. And we go, yeah, but if I'm not doing it, then somehow a part of me is dying. And anybody who's followed me knows I talk about death a lot. And death is scary and it's hard. And letting go of part of who you are is terrifying because it feels like you're dying. And I don't want to diminish that focusing on outcomes is a form of death, and it is really hard. And you're going to need support. You're going to need help through it, but it is the best way forward for you and the people around you. And I think the other piece is it's a marathon, not a sprint. This is not something that you go, Christopher, I listened to your talk. I'm so inspired. Absolutely. I changed everything. If you do that, I'm going to talk to you in a week and you're going to tell me you're right back where you were. You can't do that. You cannot come in and say, we're going to change everything about what it is. And I loved how our speakers today talked about that in their examples of, yeah, we didn't necessarily delete everything else we've ever created, throw it in the trash and say, from now on, microlearning only. No, we say, here's where we are today. If this is the outcome we're driving to, what are the small changes we can make over time that will slowly get us to a better position than where we are now? And I think those are some of the hard truths, but they're important truths to recognize, because if you sugarcoat these things, you're going to feel like a failure. You're going to feel like you died. You're going to feel like you gave up part of who you are. You're going to feel like you're failing because you're not getting where you think you're supposed to be. And it's not about getting to where someone else tells you you're supposed to be. It's about figuring out the outcomes you're driving to and figuring out what the right path is to get you there. So with that, I'm going to share with you in this, I have a 7 Taps e-learning because the team has been so generous to let me have access to the tool that, again, takes these concepts, because there's more to it than what I put here. And this is something that you need to be reminded of all the time. And so I wanted to create a resource that people could go back to and be like, you know what, maybe I can't even take on all 4. Maybe I can't do all 4 of these things right now. Maybe that's too much. That's okay. That's okay. Maybe you just need to pause. Maybe you just need to let go of some things that you've been holding on too tightly to. Maybe you're doing too much and you actually need to take things off your plate. Or maybe there's some stuff you're doing right now that really doesn't matter at all. And if you really asked yourself, is this the most important thing I could be doing today? The answer to that question, if you were really honest with yourself, would be, no, it's not. It's not. And I think about that a lot as a husband and a father to 8, because my time is precious and I grew up around death. And as much as I hate thinking about it, as much as everybody else, I know tomorrow's not guaranteed. And just this last weekend, a high school classmate of mine passed away unexpectedly. And so I'm well aware I lost a best friend at 18. You don't know what tomorrow brings. And if you don't know what outcomes you're running towards and how you're going to get there, you are going to misuse and abuse the time, the precious time that you've been given to pull that off. And so I hope, if nothing else, you walk away from this going, how do I get more clear on the outcomes I'm driving, whether it's micro-learning, whether it's the way I live my life, whether it's the things I do, and then how do I take the steps to make a 1-degree shift each day so that in 180 days, I'm in a wildly different direction than I ever thought I would be.